again with a new video. I have an overall channel update as well as some thoughts on a few current events. So I might separate it into a few different videos. The first thing I wanted to discuss is I tried to do another idle pouring stream, which was, I think it was maybe going to be the last one for a while, but then yeah, my phone just pooped out halfway through, and then I tried to re-upload it, and then I don't know, I was almost done with what I had to say. It was just kind of fell in an awkward spot. So I decided maybe I'll just record a proper update and then just release it that way, because if I pre-record it, then it can't, just disconnect randomly. So that was kind of just a really, really long inside joke with myself. So there probably won't be many more of those or even any of them. I don't know. I might just use recorded footage from it for fun if I need like that ADHD style sort of thing to add to a thing. I don't know. That's just like in the toolbox somewhere. But so what I wanted to focus on is, first of all, those of you who watched my channel around this time last year might recall me referring to women respond to the men's movement. That is a project I'm working on. That's all I'm going to say for now. There's another special project I'm working on that I'm going to keep a little bit even more secret than that. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that you might have noticed now I am doing those streams on Fridays with Prince of Queens and Our Cat's Gay. And it looks like Saint of Bacon is also regular too. And there'll be all kinds of different guests on that show. It should be very interesting. Yeah, so every week we'll talk about all kinds of different issues. So I just have to come and check it out and see what we have going on there. So we've had a few of them so far. So this week I think should be the fourth one. And, as it's going on, we're getting a little bit more organization and structure to it. It is a little bit like how Honey Badger Radio was in the very early stages of Honey Badger Radio, where there were, like, tech issues and things all the time. But, yeah, so that's interesting. One topic that I'm actually looking into regarding that is in queer theory. I was actually looking at Refusing to Be a Man by John Stoltenberg. Is that the correct name, if I remember correctly? Yes, John Stoltenberg. Now, the funny thing about it is, so the reason I fell down this rabbit hole was because I was looking over Women Respond to the Men's Movement. I was looking over Gloria Steinem's introduction to that, which that would be the first part of it. It's the response to Gloria Steinem's prelude in that book. The most fascinating thing about that book is it came out in 1992, but she references an even older book written by John Stoltenberg called Refusing to Be a Man, which is actually available online at feministesradicalists.org. So I'll include that link down here too. So if you want to maybe read through that, because I'm going to be referencing it a lot and kind of responding to a lot of topics in it as I go forward with the kind of content I'm making here. But the other part of queer theory that I was looking into had to do with Judith Butler and Foucault. It's actually, you can find the Yale lecture on queer theory if you search for it. Of course, they disabled comments, likes, and dislikes, but at least they left it up. And, that's half the battle, is leaving it up. Not being a pussy and keeping the comment section open is the next half, I think. But, well, it was really the most interesting bit of it that I took away, and I'll have to probably go through and maybe give it another listen and maybe take some notes or something like that. I was just kind of passively listening to it. But there was this point that I think he pulled from Judith Butler where she was arguing that, a lot of people argue that heterosexuality is sort of primary and that homosexuality is derivative of it. Her counter-argument to that is that the conception of the heterosexual requires the homosexual to first be a concept in order for you to even distinguish it. And at first I heard this argument, I thought, wow, that's actually really interesting. And he immediately applies it to other things, right? Like you would never grab a piece of meat and say, this is raw meat, unless you had a conception of cooked meat already. So you can kind of already see how it's an interesting linguistic sort of a dance. I think that, though, in regards to sexuality, it's kind of misapplied. But I am going to look a little bit closer into the concept before I make any judgment. I'm a little bit judgmental, a little trigger happy on that. I kind of figure that if you're very judgmental and you're wrong, people are very, very, they're more than happy to point out straw mans, and they're more than happy to clarify things if you misrepresent them. So, is that bad advice? Maybe I should reconsider that. Maybe I should be more charitable. That was a couple of topics I've been looking into. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, I think I had mentioned in one of the Gaytriarchy streams, I said I am a reductionist. And what I mean by that is that, anybody who, if you studied a little bit of philosophy or even just like had debates online, it's a term people love to throw out. They love to say, oh, you're being reductionist right now. And it's just a fancy, douchey way of saying, oh, you're oversimplifying things. You're not taking into account some things which are relevant and which change the conclusion. You're ignoring those things, right? Now, that's obviously that can happen. There is such a thing as being overly simplistic, of course. However, there's also such a thing as simplifying. And what I believe is that a lot of people, they rest upon, oh, you're being reductionist, not because they're going to add in relevant information, but because they're going to be adding irrelevant information. And I think that a lot of ideologies really, really rely upon us not being vigilant enough to point out where stuff is irrelevant. And from this standpoint, you can actually see this is a lot of what Tucker Carlson does on his show. A lot of what he does is sticking to the most relevant point. One way that I would look at it is, imagine I'm saying, I'm making dinner, and then you ask me, well, what are you making? Like, let's say I'm making dinner for both of us, right? And you want to know what we're going to eat. And I say, oh, I'm making a turkey dinner, right? So from that, I only really gave you one bit of information, which is the main course, turkey. It's going to be a turkey dinner. And then from that, you might infer, okay, so it might be like turkey, maybe mashed potatoes, maybe some cranberry, whatever the fuck, I don't know, stuffing, whatever, right? You might have an assumption there. Now you might say, oh, well, you're being reductionist because what we're actually having is stuffing and mashed potatoes and gravy and the cranberry shit and other stuff and whatever. And maybe you don't even mention turkey, right? But so imagine those two descriptions, one where it is only the turkey is described and one where everything but the turkey is described. Well, the latter description is less reductionist than the former one, right? And what you can see is that, let's say you include everything, well, there's a point where you have such a level of detail that it's not useful to even fucking talk to anyone, right? Because in theory, I could rattle off details about that dinner to define it, such that I'm one of like the tree ants from Lord of the Rings, right? It takes me like fucking however many fucking years to say my name. And there's a point where you say, okay, just saying turkey dinner is actually a more useful and almost a more accurate way to describe it. Because when you try to describe it that other way with this method of communication, I'm not even going to remember all the shit you're trying to convey. It's just not, it's totally divorced from reality in terms of the expression of human ideas and their reception. So my point is that it's a two-edged sword. And in general, we understand very well that oversimplifying is bad. However, we don't understand as well that overcomplicating is also bad. And that's why I say I am a reductionist. And I say that in situations where what I'm trying to do is say, it's a fucking turkey dinner. It is a turkey dinner. Okay? And the reason this perspective and this sort of a reduction is so valuable is because you have issues. For example, let's take suicide. So suicide is an overwhelmingly male issue. However, every single time it's mentioned, they say, but women attempt it more often. They might mention both things, right? So then if you hear both of those things, you might walk away with kind of a 50-50 sort of an impression. You're like, oh, well, men commit suicide more often and women attempt it more often. And you kind of have this, it creates like a fake, sort of an illusion of there being balance. And this happens all the time. And it's especially true in gender issues because people always feel like they're being fair if they mention both genders in regards to an issue. But what's not often expressed is that the severity of those issues is not comparable. So when I say suicide's a male issue, I'm being reductionist. I totally just erase the part of it where women attempt it more often, right? So technically it's more accurate to give both pieces of information. However, it's also technically not as accurate because if it gives people the impression that suicide is also a women's issue to the degree to which that it's man or even in a comparable sense, then that impression is actually less accurate than the so-called reduced one. And this is one thing that this is one reason that the identification of radical MRA is it's kind of difficult to define. But what I am finding is that it really does seem to be that I accept social justice warriors. I guess their approach. I guess I accept their flavor. I accept who they are. I accept that they choose to respond in those ways. My point of departure is that their facts are wrong. However, if their facts were true, I actually don't really see much of a problem with them doing what they do. Not at all. And I think that makes me have a pretty different perspective from a lot of other people. A lot of other people in anti-feminism, they just they think, oh, well, point well taken, but could you maybe tone it down a little bit? That's not me. I'm saying the exact opposite. I'm saying I don't give a fuck about your tone. Your shit's wrong, and here's the right shit. And can we freak out about this instead? Because I'm not trying to be popular or choose like the most the most popular views. And I've never been able to. Ever since I learned what libertarianism was, I was always in that sort of black sheepish territory of politics, which I think a lot of libertarians can sympathize with. Is that you're always kind of the crazy person. Your views are always kind of under siege. If you can't defend it, you might be the only one in the room who would defend it. So. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but my point is that in regards to gender issues, we do need a lot of reductionism, because there's a lot of shit where we just need to say, shut the fuck up, like, it's about men. Like, these are men's issues. These are being ignored as men's issues, and they're being ignored as men's issues in a way that their corresponding female issues at the times in which you might say that said female issues existed were never ignored. In other words, when we're talking about elevating men's rights to the level of women's rights, or I suppose we can't do that. That's impossible. It'd be a society of all children if we did that. But we're talking about balancing the rights of the genders. The level of rights that men have so few rights right now that women have never been at this stage. If you want to sit there and talk about, coverture laws and talk about, oh, we used to have a traditional balance and all these things, I think that actually adds too much complication to the point where it's actually less accurate than to simply just say men have had it worse, and that we have less empathy for men. The whole honey badger drama, this has been going on for a couple weeks or whatever. So, 2-minute debunk of the whole thing. Basically, everybody who buys into this shitting all over Honey Badger Radio. So one huge part of this argument hinges on Karen Strawn allegedly asking for Medeker's docs or something. Now, if you watch Jim Medeker's video, his response to, his MRM Part 1 video, which is partially a response to Karen Strawn's video directed at him, he screen caps his response to her tweet, the so-called docs tweet, and he's like, now maybe I'm getting carried away or whatever. He kind of asides to that. But if you pause it and you read her tweet and his response, yeah, your response is over the top. And anybody who views your video and bothers to stop and read the actual things would see that. And that's why if you listen to V's stream when what the fuck is that guy's name? Captain something. It was Captain Patriarchy or Shitlord or some name like that. I don't remember. But anyway, he tried to bring up the shit well, you tried to convince him to dox or whatever, and Karen kind of went off on him because it's true, and that's the major bit. It's the weak link in the whole thing. That it's some banter on Twitter that they're trying to blow up into. Oh my God, Karen's trying to dox me because she wants to sue me. It's kind of retarded and hysterical. But the other part of it too is so the overall charge is that Honey Badger Radio basically squanders money. Is that they only care about money and that they're only doing it for money and that they're not effective. These were most of Dean Esme's criticisms, was that they act like none of the other manosphere exists and that they don't do enough to connect people to the appropriate resources. Now, maybe Honey Badger could do a better job at connecting people to specific resources when they call. Maybe that's a thing. However, I think it's a little bit. I think it's unfair to say that they act like they are the only part of the manosphere when they kind of act as a hub for it. In that their fireside chats is basically dedicated to bringing new kind of related voices on in different areas. Sure, it's not necessarily explicitly all MRAs, but that's just one example. And that's the overall point I'm making, is anybody, if you feel maybe you have doubts about Honey Badger Radio, you think, maybe they're not as into all of this as they say they are. Maybe they have this ulterior motive. Maybe they're just faking and trying to get money or whatever. I say go to their channel. Go to their channel and look at the actual videos and let the content speak for itself. Frankly, I think that the quantity times the quality of that content, I think it's practically unrivaled. It's really practically unrivaled, particularly in the realm of men's issues. I don't think there's anything like it. I don't think there's anyone else churning out that kind of information the way that other people are. And sure, they can't do everything. You can't be doing everything that they're doing and also setting up men's shelters and also volunteering for everything and also doing all those things. The problem, though, is that men's rights activism by itself is not going to solve the problem. It's like bringing food to Africa. The problem is structural. There's a problem with how things are set up fundamentally, and of course, there's something good to be said for fighting the battle on the front line and helping people in the moment when you can. But there's also something to be said for fighting the longer battle. And if you want to argue about whether or not Honey Badger Radio is doing a good job of that, I say show, don't tell. I say either show them how they can do it better or show them by doing it better yourself. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing seems like very manufactured and disingenuous. So I'm a proud supporter of Honey Badger Radio. I'm really excited to see where they take the channel, what they keep on doing with it. I think that the lawsuit that they're fighting is actually a very just cause, and it does seem like they're doing a very good job fighting it. It seems like it's very likely they will have success from that. But remains to be seen, obviously. And of course, in regards to anything they've done, of course there's room for improvement. That goes without saying. And then the last topic I wanted to address, the slut-shaming of Donald Trump, Part 2. You may remember the first part of this movie. It happened around Grab Him by the Pussy, which was like seriously, if you got offended by that, fuck you. Like, fuck every single person who got offended by Grab Him by the Pussy. That's like the dumbest, pettiest shit ever. The fact that you're able to get offended of that and able to make that an issue is a sign of, it's an actual genuine sign of privilege. If you wanted me to say, okay, if we're going to be forced to use this concept of privilege and say that it's a good and useful concept and we need to define it, that's my definition. You got offended by Grab It by the Pussy. That is the clearest and most objective black and white definition of being privileged that we have yet. Thank you. You can give me a Nobel Prize or whatever the fuck prize you give to. I guess I'm a social scientist. I'm also an armchair anal theorist. Just however many I can pick up on YouTube. Those are all the ones I'm going for, and it's going awesome. Okay, another thing. But seriously, so part 2 now is the Stormy Daniels issue, which it showed up for a little bit and then it disappeared, and then all of a sudden it showed up again because they realized they were just like out of tricks and out of ways to discredit Donald Trump. So then they decided that they're like, okay, let's spread rumors about him fucking beautiful women. Okay. But what I find very fascinating about this entire little dance, because I actually did get around to watching the interview with Anderson Cooper. So I used to do mock trial. Now everybody tells me I should be a lawyer, but I could never bring myself to do it because first I wanted to figure out, like, is government justified, and I was kind of more preoccupied with those questions. That was my point of departure, was on an ethical level, do I want to make my life and my career tied to something that I think is fundamentally just dressed up, paper thin, just veneer bullshit over what's essentially a terrorist monopoly, just crime syndicate. Like, that's all it is. Like, and it's really, really, like, embarrassing and insulting how obvious it is that the government is evil and how, like, simple it is to demonstrate that it's evil. I don't know. Like, so for me, I thought, for sure, if you become a lawyer, like, you're going to be dealing with that 100% of the time. Meanwhile, there's like 99% of all the other fucking things you could do, so why not just shoot from the hip and do what else the fuck you can do? But I loved mock trial because my college didn't have speech or debate, and that was the closest thing they could offer, and it was a lot of fun. You actually have teams where you have attorneys and witnesses. You do 6 versus 6, right? And really, what my team found out was that I was really good at playing kind of like goofy, offish sort of characters and making up different concepts and adding flavors to witnesses and things like that. So that kind of became where I got put in, and I had a lot of fun with that, playing different characters. But that's what the Stormy Daniels shit reminds me of. It's like imagining, a mock trial witness with the mock trial attorney, and they're acting like a coordinated sort of a team. And what reminds me so much about it is just this idea that basically there's all these elements they need in order to make their case make sense, right? But Stormy Daniels can't prove it by herself. And the problem is that she states again and again that she's not a victim. She states in so many words that she's basically just trying to be a prostitute. And then she has all these weird contradictions where she says that, I mean, and everybody else has pointed out all of these, but it's really funny, right? Because she says at one point, oh, I signed it because, you know, I didn't really quite understand the details. I told them that I won't say anything, but I'm not comfortable lying. But if we're supposed to believe her now, she's admitting that she lied in the past. So part of her new version, her new story, is asking us to believe that one of the so-called reasons that she was like bullied or pressured into signing this non-disclosure disagreement or agreement is that she wouldn't be willing to lie to advance a cause, or to lie for money. When, like, that's... Anyway, so the whole point is her credibility is, like, just total garbage. But her attorney goes all in. The fucking lawyer goes all in on amping up her victim status. Because if he doesn't do it, then it's not there. And that's why everybody looking at it is just like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, it's not believable. You can't, like, he's trying to be a proxy victim. I wonder if he's trying to be Gloria Allred. I think maybe Gloria Allred is a little bit better at this than he is. He's trying to pull a Gloria Allred, and it's just like the formula doesn't work because he's a man. So those are some of my thoughts. But yeah, it's really funny watching, like doing fake court shit and seeing like fake witnesses and all that fake shit and how you set it all up and everything. It's really funny how much of that actually does translate into the real world. And you can tell when people are like rehearsing lines and when they have stories that they're being fed. Like, you can tell that like they come off as bad mock trial witnesses. It's a distinct kind of a bad sort of a witness. And the reason mock trial is so particularly interesting for drawing that sort of a thing out is that if you think about like TV interviews, obviously, like if you're at the stand, anything that's kind of question and answery, anything like that, that's where you'll see the fakeness, and the fakeness expresses itself in the way that like a person who's playing a mock trial witness does. So what do we learn from the Stormy Daniels issue? Well, it's a case of selective outrage in every single way you look at it. So it's disingenuous from its source, and then the people who are trying to champion the issue, you know, they conveniently ignore other acts of infidelity and other things like that. But the number one problem that I have with politics and with the legal world and with everything related to it is the fake veneer of dignity. The idea that people in Congress think they could possibly be disgraced by the president fucking a porn star. Even if he did at the time of being a president, frankly, I'm not sure. Nothing is beneath the dignity of the United States government. Absolutely nothing. You know, this is a nation that sells its unborn into debt slavery. So shut the fuck up. You have absolutely no right to tell other people what is or isn't morally distasteful. I don't give a shit. All the people who are over the age of 50, you guys fucked up. You totally fucked up. You could have seen it coming. You could have prevented it. You did fuck all to prevent it. We're fucked. We tried to vote in a small government candidate, and you know, signs are indicating that Trump may be a failure. Signs are indicating that Donald Trump is just proof that we can't have a United States government. We can't have a national government. We never should have had it. It was a stupid idea from the beginning. Just a really expensive and stupid and costly, retarded idea, having a government. But there's hope. He still might go down in history as the greatest president of all time. And the reason is because people are now saying, I don't give a shit about him fucking a porn star. In other words, people's moral compasses are finally getting calibrated. And I'm seeing more people who are pissed off about Donald Trump signing that budget deal, proving that he's not a small government president anymore. People are more pissed off about that than they are about Stormy Daniels, and that's correct. That's how I feel. I might not support Donald Trump in 2020. That's when 16 plus 4, 2020. And the reason is because I'm not sure I can believe in good faith that he would reduce the size of government. So my choices are either abstinence, don't vote. That's my default. It's generally the correct position. The only exceptions are if you can see someone that has a good chance of reducing the size of government. That was Donald Trump. It was the correct decision at the time. We had no way of knowing it would go this badly. But otherwise, I think we'll vote for Adam Kokesh in 2020. Thank you.
Hi bitch, hi bitch, hi bitch, hi bitch, hi bitch.